In the radiant glow of dawn, as it kissed the ancient stones of Jerusalem, a city where Solomon's magnificent temple once stood, a nascent brotherhood, forged from fervent faith and the pressing demands of warfare, was on the precipice of emergence. The year was 1119, and the Holy Land, a precious prize recently wrested from Muslim dominion by the thunderous armies of the First Crusade, lay vulnerable and scarred. It was a territory too invaluable to forfeit, yet too vast and distant for the Western powers to readily defend. The morning air, redolent with the scent of frankincense from countless churches, mingled with the dust of reconstruction and the hushed prayers of pilgrims who had journeyed thousands of miles to walk the very paths trodden by Christ himself. Yet, peril lurked in every shadow along these hallowed pilgrim routes. Bandits preyed upon the devout, and Muslim raiders launched relentless strikes against Christian settlements. The scattered, thin line of Crusader knights across the Levant seemed woefully insufficient to safeguard the continuous streams of European pilgrims arriving with each passing season. It was within this crucible of profound devotion and desperate need that 9 French knights, spearheaded by a nobleman from Champagne named Hugh de Payens, made a momentous decision. Unlike many crusaders who, having fulfilled their vows, returned to the comfort and security of their European estates, these men resolved to remain. They pledged their lives to the unwavering protection of Christian pilgrims and the steadfast defense of the sacred sites newly liberated from Islamic rule. These 9 individuals, Hugh de Payens, Godfrey de Saint-Omer, André de Montbard, Payen de Montdidier, Geoffrey Bison, Archambaud de Saint-Aignan, Roland, Gondomar, and Rossel, were not merely warriors in pursuit of glory or fortune. They were men ignited by a divine spark, profoundly moved by the spiritual resonance of standing in the very places where Christ had walked, where the apostles had preached, and where Christian blood had been shed for the sake of faith. The very stones of Jerusalem seemed to whisper tales of eternity. And these knights felt an undeniable calling to something far grander than themselves. Their vow, though simple, was profoundly impactful: to live as poor fellow soldiers of Christ, bound by monastic promises of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet simultaneously trained in the rigorous arts of war, and wholly dedicated to safeguarding Christian pilgrims traversing to and from the holy places. They would embody a revolutionary concept: monks and warriors, servants of God and masters of the sword, a fusion that would fundamentally transform the essence of medieval knighthood. Baldwin II, the King of Jerusalem, recognizing the noble intent of these knights, granted them quarters within the royal palace, strategically situated on the Temple Mount, the very location where Solomon's temple had once ascended in its magnificent splendor. The knights established their headquarters in a section of the complex that encompassed the former Al-Aqsa Mosque, which the Crusaders firmly believed stood upon the ruins of Solomon's temple itself. From this hallowed ground, they adopted their legendary name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. For 9 years, these knights toiled in relative obscurity, their numbers few, their resources meager, and their mission seemingly insurmountable. They diligently patrolled the perilous roads connecting the coast to Jerusalem, escorted small groups of pilgrims, and gradually assimilated the brutal realities of warfare in a land where the sun beat down mercilessly. Water was a precious commodity. An enemy struck with swift precision from the desert wastes before vanishing like mirages. Yet, their unwavering dedication did not go unnoticed. Word of their sacred mission began to ripple throughout Europe, carried by returning pilgrims who spoke with awe and profound gratitude of the knights who had protected them on their arduous journeys. Tales of men who had renounced worldly ambition to serve Christ in the most perilous and demanding of circumstances reached the grand courts and monasteries of France. In 1128, Hugh de Payens embarked on a journey to Europe, not to abandon his solemn mission, but to secure vital support for it. His arrival ignited a sensation. Here stood a man who perfectly embodied the pinnacle ideals of medieval Christianity: noble birth seamlessly interwoven with monastic devotion, and martial prowess consecrated to divine service. The response was nothing short of extraordinary. Bernard of Clairvaux, the most influential churchman of his era, emerged as the Templars' most ardent advocate. In his seminal treatise, In Praise of the New Knighthood, Bernard proclaimed that these warrior monks represented a new and perfect form of service to God. Where secular knights might fall into sin through violence pursued for personal glory or gain, the Templars fought solely for Christ and the protection of the innocent. Their warfare, Bernard argued, was sanctified, their violence purified by their monastic vows and sacred purpose. At the Council of Troyes in 1129, Pope Honorius II formally recognized the Knights Templar as an official religious order of the Catholic Church. They were granted a written rule, largely based on the rule of Saint Benedict, but meticulously adapted for their distinctive military mission. This rule meticulously prescribed every facet of their daily existence, how they should pray, eat, sleep, fight, and conduct themselves in all circumstances. They were bestowed the right to wear white mantles, symbols of purity traditionally reserved for the Cistercian order, and later appended the iconic red cross that would become their most universally recognizable emblem. The response across Christian Europe was overwhelmingly positive. Nobles eagerly offered their sons to the order, churches diligently collected donations for the Templars' mission, and rulers generously granted lands and privileges to sustain their vital work. The order, which had humbly begun with 9 knights in a dilapidated palace, began an unprecedented expansion, transforming into an international organization accountable to no king or prince, but solely to the Pope himself. Young men of noble lineage flocked to join the order, captivated by the promise of serving God through disciplined warfare and monastic devotion. They hailed from France, England, Germany, Spain, Italy, and Hungary, a diverse brotherhood unified by common vows and a shared, unwavering purpose. Each new member brought not only his sword and formidable skills, but also the wealth and influence of his family, slowly but surely transforming the poor fellow soldiers into one of the richest and most powerful organizations in medieval Europe. This transformation was gradual yet profound. What had originated as a small contingent of knights protecting pilgrims evolved into an expansive network stretching from the Holy Land to the furthest reaches of Christian Europe. Commanderies, fortified monasteries that functioned as recruiting centers, training grounds, and administrative headquarters, sprang up across the continent. Within each, the same meticulous routine of prayer and preparation, devotion and discipline, fostered a uniformity of purpose that transcended national boundaries and local loyalties. The rule meticulously governed every aspect of a Templar's life with exacting precision. Knights were obligated to attend daily Mass, recite prayers at prescribed hours, eat in reverent silence, and sleep in dormitories illuminated by oil lamps throughout the night. They were strictly forbidden from hunting for pleasure, from dicing or gambling, and even from kissing their mothers or sisters. Their hair was to be kept short, their beards long. They were permitted no personal possessions. All property belonged unequivocally to the order. Even their attire was rigidly regulated. White mantles for knights, brown or black for sergeants, with the indelible red cross branding them all as soldiers of Christ. Training was constant, unyielding, and exceptionally rigorous. These were not merely knights who happened to be monks, but warriors honed to perfection in their lethal craft. They practiced daily with sword and lance, learning to fight as cohesive, disciplined units rather than individual heroes, a paradigm shift that would make them the most feared heavy cavalry of their age. Their horses, specifically bred for warfare, were armored and trained to function as weapons in themselves. Their equipment was standardized and perpetually refined through practical experience and innovative adaptations. As the order expanded, so too did its influence and formidable reputation. Kings sought their counsel. Popes granted them extraordinary privileges, and common folk regarded them with a potent mixture of awe and reverence. The Templars were accountable to no secular authority, exempt from local taxes and laws, and free to traverse any border in their devoted service to Christ. They became, in essence, a state within states, a formidable power that transcended the conventional boundaries of medieval politics and society. Yet, beneath the burgeoning magnificence and influence, the original, austere spirit of the order persisted. At its core, it remained what it had always been, a brotherhood of men who had entirely surrendered their lives to God, who perceived their military service as a profound form of worship, and who were prepared to lay down their lives rather than betray their sacred vows. Each morning, as the sun ascended over their scattered commanderies and castles, the Templars would gather for prayer, a solemn ritual that served as a potent reminder that they were, first and foremost, servants of Christ, soldiers not of earthly kings, but of the King of Heaven. The initial flame ignited in those first 9 nights had proliferated across Europe and the Holy Land, giving rise to an organization unlike any the world had ever witnessed. They were warrior monks who prayed with the fervent devotion of contemplatives and fought with the untamed ferocity of lions. The Knights Templar had, in their ascendancy, become the perfect embodiment of medieval Christendom's loftiest ideals, and perhaps harbored the very seeds of its ultimate tragedy. As the morning mist dissolved from Jerusalem's golden stones, and the resonant call to prayer echoed from their chapel bells, the Templars prepared for another day of unwavering service. In a world where the sacred and the violent, the spiritual and the martial, the eternal and the temporal had become inextricably intertwined, they had been born from sacred fire. And in that very fire, they would live, fight, and if necessary, die for the glory of God and the steadfast protection of the faithful. The Forge of Warriors. Training and Tactics. Clad in their distinctive white mantles, from the dusty training yards of European commanderies to the sun-baked battlefields of Outremer, the Knights Templar meticulously forged themselves into the most disciplined and feared military force of the medieval world. They were warriors of an unprecedented kind, men who seamlessly blended the tactical precision of professional soldiers with the unyielding devotion of monks, creating a brotherhood that would fundamentally revolutionize the very concepts of warfare and knighthood. The transformation of young nobles into Templar knights was a process as demanding as it was sacred. When a candidate presented himself at a commandery's gates, seeking admission to the esteemed order, he faced an exhaustive examination not only of his martial prowess but also of his profound spiritual commitment, his noble lineage, and his unreserved willingness to surrender everything for the sake of the brotherhood. The order exclusively accepted men of free birth, legitimate parentage, and sufficient physical strength to endure the formidable weight of armor and the punishing demands of combat. The initiation ceremony itself was cloaked in profound secrecy, conducted behind tightly closed doors with only full, initiated members of the order present. Candidates solemnly swore the triple vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience that bound all religious orders, but with additional, specific promises tailored to their unique military calling. They vowed never to retreat in battle unless outnumbered 3-1, never to seek ransom if captured, and never to surrender a Templar castle to the enemy. These vows were far more than mere formalities. They were unbreakable commitments that shaped every fiber of a Templar's existence until death. Once accepted, the new brother received the order's distinctive regalia. The immaculate white mantle symbolizing his purity of purpose, the bold red cross marking him as a soldier of Christ, and the coif, a white cloth head covering worn beneath the helmet. Only knights of proven noble birth were permitted to wear the white mantle. Sergeants and other members of the order wore brown or black robes, a visual distinction that reinforced the order's hierarchical structure while simultaneously emphasizing the sacred nature of the knightly calling. Daily life within a Templar commandery followed a rhythm as precise as clockwork, meticulously balancing spiritual obligations with rigorous military training. The brothers rose before dawn for the service of matins, gathering in their chapel as the first sliver of light touched the horizon. Throughout the day, they observed the canonical hours, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline, their prayers punctuating the relentless rhythm of training, administrative duties, and communal meals. Meals were consumed in silence, with one brother reading aloud from scripture or the lives of saints while the others ate. The food, though simple, was nourishing: bread, vegetables, some fruit, and meat only 3 times per week unless they were actively campaigning. Wine was permitted but carefully rationed. The rules specified that brothers should eat at long tables, maintaining their discipline even in the satisfaction of basic needs. Training consumed a substantial portion of their time and energy. In the practice yards of their commanderies, Templars relentlessly perfected the skills that rendered them masters of medieval warfare. They learned to fight not as individual heroes seeking personal glory, the prevalent mode of secular knighthood, but as highly disciplined units whose coordinated actions amplified their effectiveness far beyond their actual numbers. The bedrock of Templar military doctrine was the devastating cavalry charge. A ferocious assault by heavily armored knights mounted on powerful warhorses that could shatter enemy formations and decisively turn the tide of battle in mere moments. However, unlike secular knights who often charged impetuously in pursuit of individual glory, the Templars developed sophisticated tactics that underscored timing, precise coordination, and disciplined execution. Their signature formation was the conroy, tight squadrons of 25 to 50 knights riding knee to knee, their lances leveled as one, thundering toward the enemy with a precision that maximized the devastating impact of their assault. Contemporary chronicles vividly describe the sheer terror inspired by these charges. "The charging knight is able to punch a hole in the walls of Babylon," wrote one awestruck observer, while another noted that the Templars rode so closely together that an apple thrown into their midst would not have touched the ground. The psychological impact of a Templar charge was as critical as its raw physical force. Enemies faced not just a mass of armed men, but the very embodiment of divine wrath, warriors who displayed no fear because they held the unwavering belief that death in battle would grant them immediate entry into paradise. Their white mantles streamed behind them, red crosses blazing on their chests, as the Templars struck their enemies like the very hand of God, implacable and irresistible. Training for such precision demanded relentless practice. Knights meticulously learned to maintain perfect formation at full gallop, to coordinate their lance strikes for maximum impact, and to seamlessly follow up their initial charge with deadly sword work if the enemy line did not immediately break. They practiced until their movements became instinctive, until horse and rider functioned as a single, formidable instrument of war, guided by what seemed like supernatural discipline. The Templars' equipment was standardized and constantly refined through practical experience. Each knight maintained multiple destriers, the powerful warhorses specifically bred for cavalry combat. These animals were trained with the same meticulous care as their riders, taught to strike with their hooves, to respond to subtle leg pressure when their riders' hands were occupied with weapons, and to remain steady amidst the chaos and cacophony of battle. Armor evolved throughout the Order's existence, perpetually incorporating the latest advancements in protection and mobility. Early Templars wore mail hauberks, shirts of interlocking iron rings that provided flexible protection, covered by their distinctive white surcoats bearing the Red Cross. Helmets progressed from simple conical designs to the formidable great helms that fully enclosed the entire head, featuring narrow slits for vision and breathing holes to prevent suffocation in the oppressive heat of battle. Weapons were selected for their sheer effectiveness rather than mere ornamentation. The lance, typically between 12 and 14 feet long and tipped with a sharp steel point, served as the primary weapon for the initial, devastating charge. Once combat devolved into close quarters personal engagement, knights drew their swords, long, straight blades designed for cutting rather than thrusting, capable of cleaving through mail and delivering devastating wounds to unarmored opponents. The Templars' tactical innovations extended far beyond individual combat techniques to encompass a strategic thinking that fundamentally revolutionized medieval warfare. They were among the first to grasp the profound importance of logistics, the unglamorous but utterly vital work of ensuring that armies remained adequately supplied, healthy, and combat-ready throughout prolonged campaigns. Their extensive international network of commanderies created a sophisticated supply chain that could sustain operations across vast distances for extended periods. Castle construction and siege warfare were other domains where Templar expertise proved indispensable, as they acquired strongholds throughout the Holy Land and Europe. They developed highly sophisticated techniques for fortification, creating defensive systems that could withstand prolonged assaults while simultaneously serving as robust bases for offensive operations. Castles such as Chastel Blanc and Tortosa in Syria became legendary for their impregnability and immense strategic importance. The Order's approach to recruitment and training engendered an unprecedented level of military effectiveness. Unlike feudal armies that gathered temporarily for specific campaigns, the Templars maintained permanent readiness. Their knights lived together, trained together, and fought together year after year, fostering a cohesion and mutual trust virtually impossible to achieve in conventional military forces. Discipline distinguished the Templars from other knights as much as their sacred religious vows. Where secular knights might break formation to pursue individual enemies or seek personal glory, Templars steadfastly maintained their ranks and followed orders with monastic obedience. This rigorous discipline made them invaluable as shock troops, capable of delivering devastating attacks precisely when and where commanders needed them most. Their reputation for military excellence attracted the keen attention of kings and military leaders throughout Europe and the Holy Land. Templar knights frequently served as tactical advisors, their expertise sought by rulers who recognized that these warrior monks possessed an understanding of warfare that traditional feudal knights simply lacked. Their mere presence in an army was often sufficient to significantly boost morale among allies and strike paralyzing fear into the hearts of their enemies. The Templars' military innovations profoundly influenced warfare far beyond their own ranks. Other military orders, such as the Hospitallers, the Teutonic Knights, and the orders established in Spain during the Reconquista, adopted many Templar practices. Secular armies began to place greater emphasis on discipline and coordination over individual heroics, marking the beginning of the decline of the wild, undisciplined knight, and paving the way for more professional military practices. Yet, for all their martial prowess, the Templars never once forgot that they were first and foremost religious men. Before each battle, they devoutly attended Mass and received the sacraments. They fought not for personal glory or material gain, but for the transcendent glory of God and the steadfast defense of Christendom. This profound spiritual dimension of their warfare imbued them with a steadfastness and determination that purely secular warriors could rarely, if ever, match. As evening shadows stretched across their training yards, as weapons were meticulously cleaned and stored for another day's practice, the Templars would gather once more in prayer, humbly thanking God for the strength to serve Him and earnestly asking for the courage to face whatever battles tomorrow might bring. They were warriors forged in the white-hot crucible of faith and discipline, tempered in the relentless furnace of constant training and unwavering devotion. The white mantles that unequivocally marked them as soldiers of Christ would become symbols of abject terror to their enemies and beacons of hope to their allies, worn by men who had, through relentless preparation and absolute commitment to their sacred calling, transformed themselves into instruments of divine will. In them, the medieval ideal of the Christian knight found its most perfect and, in a way, terrible expression. Guardians of the sacred land. In the shimmering heat of the Levantine sun, where ancient olive groves crown limestone hills and the resonant calls of muezzins echoed across valleys dotted with biblical stones, the Knights Templar stood as the ultimate guardians of Christian presence in the Holy Land. For nearly 2 centuries, they would engage in an epic struggle to uphold the precarious Crusader kingdoms, constructing formidable fortresses, fighting desperate battles, and indelibly inscribing their legacy in blood and stone across the sacred landscape where 3 great faiths converged. The Holy Land that the Templars inherited after the First Crusade was a complex, shifting mosaic of competing powers, fluid alliances, and delicate territorial arrangements. The Crusader states, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli, stretched along the eastern Mediterranean coast and inland toward the Syrian desert. Yet, they remained isolated islands of Christian rule in a predominantly Muslim sea. These territories were never truly secure. Muslim forces controlled the great cities of Damascus, Aleppo, and Cairo, while nomadic tribes launched incessant raids from the desert margins. The Crusader population was consistently and vastly outnumbered by their Muslim neighbors, and the supply of reinforcements from Europe was irregular and often woefully inadequate. In this perilous environment, the military orders, with the Templars preeminent among them, became the vital backbone of Christian defense. The Templars' first significant fortress was the castle of Gaston, granted to them in 1129. However, it was with their subsequent acquisition of other strategic strongholds, Bagraus, Tortosa, Safata, and eventually the massive complex at Athlet, that they profoundly shaped Crusader military strategy for generations. Each castle was meticulously positioned to control key routes, safeguard vital resources, or dominate strategic territories. Croix de Chevaliers, though held by the Hospitallers, perfectly exemplified the kind of fortress architecture that the military orders perfected during this tumultuous period. These were not merely defensive positions. They were intricate military and administrative centers capable of housing hundreds of knights and soldiers, maintaining extensive stables and armories, and asserting control over surrounding territories through a combination of relentless military patrols and pervasive economic influence. The Templars approached castle construction with the same methodical precision they applied to military training. Their fortresses seamlessly integrated the latest European architectural innovations with ingenious adaptations to local conditions and threats. Massive walls, multiple defensive lines, sophisticated water systems, and meticulously planned killing zones created strongholds that could endure prolonged sieges while simultaneously serving as formidable bases for offensive operations. Daily life in a Templar castle in the Holy Land differed markedly from the routine of European commanderies. Here, the brothers lived in a state of perpetual readiness for combat. Their prayers were punctuated by the insistent sounds of weapons being sharpened and scouts returning with critical intelligence about enemy movements. The heat was oppressive. Water was a precious commodity, and the ever-present threat of attack was a constant, inescapable reality. The chapel remained the spiritual heart of each fortress. But it was a chapel ingeniously built like a bunker, with thick walls capable of resisting catapult stones and narrow windows that doubled as defensive positions. Here, the Templars gathered for their daily offices, their voices rising in Latin hymns, while their weapons lay close at hand, poised to be seized at the very first sound of alarm. The brothers who served in these eastern strongholds developed an intimate knowledge of local conditions, customs, and languages. Many learned Arabic and cultivated relationships with their Muslim neighbors that transcended the simplistic hostility that often characterized Crusader Muslim interaction. They understood that survival in the Holy Land demanded not only unparalleled military prowess but also acute diplomatic skill, tactical patience, and meticulous attention to the intricate web of alliances that defined Middle Eastern politics. This practical wisdom sometimes placed the Templars at odds with newly arrived crusaders from Europe, who often arrived brimming with religious enthusiasm but sorely lacking understanding of local realities. The Templars had learned that not every Muslim was an implacable enemy, that tactical withdrawals were occasionally essential for long-term survival, and that the precious resources of the Crusader states were too limited to be squandered on hopeless ventures. The Order's military reputation was meticulously forged in countless engagements across the Holy Land. At the Battle of Montcassard in 1177, some 500 Templar knights played a pivotal role in helping King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem achieve one of the most astonishing victories in Crusader history, routing Saladin's significantly larger army through superior tactics and unflinching courage. The Muslim chroniclers themselves paid grudging tribute to the Templars' formidable fighting qualities, describing how their disciplined charges shattered formations that had previously seemed impregnable. Yet, the Templars also endured devastating defeats. At the Horns of Hattin in 1187, poor leadership and tactical errors led to the cataclysmic destruction of the largest Crusader army ever assembled, with the vast majority of the Templar Knights present either killed or captured. Saladin, acutely recognizing the particular threat posed by the military orders, ordered the immediate execution of captured Templars and Hospitallers, while sparing other prisoners who could potentially be ransomed. The fall of Jerusalem in 1187 marked a fundamental, grim shift in the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. The city that had been the spiritual and symbolic heart of the Crusader states capitulated to Saladin's forces. And although the Third Crusade, led by Richard the Lionheart, reclaimed much territory along the coast, Jerusalem itself remained firmly in Muslim hands. The Templars established their new headquarters at Acre, adapting to the harsh reality that their mission had irrevocably transformed from one of expansion to one of desperate preservation. Throughout these turbulent decades, the Templars steadfastly maintained their commitment to their original purpose, protecting Christian pilgrims. Even as the political situation steadily deteriorated, streams of European pilgrims continued to arrive in the Holy Land, driven by their desire to visit the sacred sites associated with Christ's life and death. The Templars provided armed escorts, safe lodging, and invaluable, detailed knowledge of routes and dangers, ensuring that the pilgrimage tradition could endure despite the relentless military upheavals. The Order's expertise in siege warfare proved invaluable throughout this period. They possessed a profound understanding of the science of undermining walls, the intricate construction and operation of siege engines, and the psychological warfare that could shatter a city's will to resist. Their engineers developed innovative advancements in military architecture and siege technology that significantly influenced fortress design throughout Europe and the wider Mediterranean world. The Templars also became masters of naval warfare, maintaining formidable fleets that could transport troops and vital supplies, conduct raids on enemy coastlines, and ensure consistent communications between the Holy Land and Europe. Their ships carried not only warriors and weapons but also the essential letters, reports, and financial instruments that kept their sprawling international organization functioning across vast distances. As the 13th century progressed, the Crusader presence in the Holy Land steadily contracted under relentless Muslim pressure. The emergence of the Mamluks in Egypt brought new, intensified military pressures and initiated a systematic campaign to eliminate Christian strongholds. One by one, the great Crusader cities and fortresses fell: Antioch in 1268, Croc des Chevaliers in 1271, Tripoli in 1289. The final, climactic act of the Crusader drama in the Holy Land unfolded at Acre, where the Templars made their last, desperate stand. The siege of Acre in 1291 witnessed the finest of the military orders fighting with a hopeless, defiant courage against overwhelming odds. When the city's walls were finally breached, the Templars bravely retreated to their massive fortress temple, continuing to resist even as the rest of the city crumbled around them. The last Templar stronghold in the Holy Land ultimately collapsed on May 28, 1291, bringing to an end nearly 2 centuries of continuous Christian presence in the Levant. The Grand Master perished in the final, desperate assault, along with the majority of the Order's leadership and many of its most valiant knights. Those who miraculously survived faced the bitter, heartbreaking task of evacuating to Cyprus, leaving behind the sacred land they had sworn to defend with their lives. Yet, even in the bitter taste of defeat, the Templars had fulfilled their essential mission. For 200 years, they had maintained Christian access to the Holy Land, steadfastly protected countless thousands of pilgrims, and bequeathed a legacy of military and architectural innovation that would influence warfare for centuries to come. They had been the indomitable guardians of the sacred land. And though that land had ultimately been lost, their guardianship had empowered generations of Christians to walk where Christ had walked, to pray where he had prayed, and to draw profound spiritual sustenance from the very stones of the holy city. As the last Templar ships departed from the Palestinian coast, their white sails gradually disappearing into the sunset beyond Acre's burning harbor, an era drew to a poignant close. But the spirit that had compelled men to sacrifice their lives for the defense of sacred places, the powerful ideal of the warrior monk serving God through disciplined warfare, and the groundbreaking innovations in military science and organization that the Templars had pioneered, would endure long after their fortresses had crumbled into desolate ruins beneath the unforgiving Palestinian sun. The sacred land that had borne witness to their greatest triumphs and ultimate defeat would forever remember them in the colossal stones of their castles, in the ancient legends whispered by local inhabitants, and in the enduring geographic names that preserve the memory of the white-mantled knights who had been its valiant guardians for so many turbulent, heroic years. The Temple's treasury. A financial revolution. Far from the swirling dust and scorching heat of Palestinian battlefields, within the stout, stone-walled counting houses of Paris and London, the Brothers of the Temple were quietly pioneering an entirely different kind of revolution. While their formidable military prowess garnered them immense fame on crusade, it was their unprecedented mastery of finance and commerce that would elevate them to become one of the most powerful organizations in medieval Europe and, ultimately, contribute to their spectacular and tragic downfall. The remarkable transformation of the poor fellow soldiers of Christ into Europe's preeminent banking institution was born out of sheer practical necessity. The exorbitant costs of maintaining knights, horses, and equipment in the distant Holy Land, coupled with the immense expense of transporting men and supplies across thousands of miles, presented financial challenges that demanded truly innovative solutions. The Templars' ingenious response to these challenges would fundamentally revolutionize medieval commerce and lay the very foundation of modern banking. The Order's earliest financial activities naturally blossomed from their charitable mission. European nobles who undertook crusading vows often found themselves in urgent need of liquidating assets quickly to fund their arduous expeditions, while those who remained behind sought secure and trustworthy repositories for their valuable possessions. The Templars' sterling reputation for unwavering integrity and their extensive network of commanderies spread across the length and breadth of Europe made them the ideal custodians of such wealth. By the mid-12th century, the Templars had developed remarkably sophisticated financial instruments that greatly facilitated trade and travel across vast distances. A merchant in London, for instance, could deposit silver with the Templars and, in return, receive a coded letter that would authorize him to withdraw an equivalent value in gold at a Templar house in Jerusalem. This ingenious system completely eliminated the substantial risks and exorbitant costs associated with physically transporting precious metals across dangerous and unpredictable territories. This revolutionary system of credit transfers, essentially the world's very first international banking network, irrevocably transformed medieval commerce. Pilgrims and merchants no longer needed to carry large sums of money on their perilous journeys. Traders could conduct business across international borders with unprecedented ease, and the flow of capital throughout Europe dramatically increased. The Templars' London Temple quickly became the de facto treasury of the English crown, with kings regularly depositing their revenues and borrowing against future income. The Master of the Temple in London served as an unofficial royal treasurer, managing crown finances with an unparalleled expertise that no mere royal official could match. Similar indispensable relationships flourished with monarchs across Europe, rendering the Templars vital to royal administration and international diplomacy. Their financial innovations extended far beyond mere simple banking services. The Templars developed intricate investment instruments, shrewdly funded commercial ventures, and provided essential mortgage services that enabled large-scale construction projects. They financed monumental cathedral building campaigns, underwrote ambitious trading expeditions, and provided the critical capital that fueled Europe's dynamic economic expansion during the High Middle Ages. The Order's accounting methods were remarkably advanced for their time. They maintained meticulously detailed records of all transactions, assiduously tracked interest payments and investment returns, and developed sophisticated auditing procedures that guaranteed financial integrity across their sprawling international network. Their ledgers, penned in a cryptic, coded script known only to authorized personnel, meticulously recorded millions of transactions in currencies from across the entire known world. Temple churches in major cities evolved into bustling centers of international finance where merchants, nobles, and royal representatives conducted business in an atmosphere of scrupulous honesty and unimpeachable professional competence. The Templars' reputation for financial integrity was so absolute that their letters of credit were accepted without a shred of question from Lisbon to Constantinople, from London to Acre. The sources of the Templars' enormous wealth were diverse and managed with exceptional care. Donations from pious Europeans continued throughout the order's existence, but increasingly, their income was derived from rents on vast landed estates, impressive returns on commercial investments, and lucrative fees for their specialized financial services. They owned thousands of properties across Europe: farms, vineyards, mills, forests, valuable urban real estate, and entire villages, all providing a steady and substantial rental income. Their estates were managed with the same unparalleled efficiency that characterized their military operations. Templar agricultural techniques were frequently the most advanced available. Their livestock breeding programs produced superior animals, and their winemaking operations achieved renown for their exceptional quality and innovative methods. The wool from Templar sheep in England was widely considered among the finest in Europe, while their vineyards in France and Spain produced exquisite wines that graced royal tables. Trade represented another significant source of their wealth. The Templars' ships transported far more than just soldiers and pilgrims. They carried luxurious goods from the east, raw materials from the west, and agricultural products between their widely scattered properties. Their formidable fleet granted them significant advantages in international commerce, while their financial expertise enabled them to dominate numerous lucrative trade routes. The order's relationship with secular authorities grew increasingly complex as their wealth and influence expanded exponentially. Kings, while appreciating the Templars' indispensable financial services and relying heavily on their expertise, also grew profoundly wary of an organization that answered to no earthly sovereign and controlled resources that fiercely rivaled royal treasuries. The Templars' inherently international character rendered them both particularly valuable and, simultaneously, particularly threatening to monarchs intent on consolidating royal power. In France, Philip IV found himself increasingly reliant on Templar financial services while concurrently resenting their independence and openly coveting their immense wealth. The order had become the crown's primary creditor, holding mortgages on royal lands and providing the vital credit that enabled royal administration to function effectively. Yet, this very financial power that made them indispensable also rendered them inherently dangerous to a king striving for absolute sovereignty. The Templars' privileged legal status added yet another layer of complexity to their relationships with secular authorities. Papal bulls had granted them sweeping exemptions from local taxes, freedom from secular jurisdiction, and the right to conduct their own internal courts. These privileges, initially intended to facilitate their holy mission, gradually became persistent sources of friction with local bishops, royal officials, and municipal authorities who increasingly perceived the Templars as arrogant and self-serving. Their burgeoning reputation for financial acumen attracted some of Europe's most capable administrators to their ranks. Templar treasurers and financial officers often possessed skills far superior to those of royal officials, making the order an exceptionally attractive career choice for talented men seeking advancement beyond the inherent limitations of feudal society. This continuous influx of administrative talent further enhanced the order's efficiency but also inadvertently contributed to growing perceptions that they had fundamentally abandoned their original spiritual mission. The sheer complexity of Templar financial operations necessitated sophisticated communication networks and meticulously defined administrative procedures. Coded messages traveled regularly between commanderies, conveying detailed instructions about investments, comprehensive reports on local conditions, and crucial intelligence about political and economic developments. This intricate information network provided the Templars with distinct advantages in both financial markets and political negotiations that their rivals could rarely, if ever, match. Their groundbreaking financial innovations profoundly influenced commercial practices throughout Europe. The revolutionary concept of credit transfer, standardized accounting procedures, international letters of credit, and professional banking services disseminated from Templar houses to secular merchants, and crucially, to the burgeoning Italian banking houses that would come to dominate later medieval finance. In many significant ways, the Templars laid the indispensable groundwork for the commercial revolution that would sweep across and transform Europe in the later Middle Ages. Yet, the Order's remarkable financial success also contained the very seeds of its inevitable destruction. Wealth bred pervasive suspicion. Independence generated simmering resentment. And the sheer success of their innovations made them appear undeniably dangerous to authorities who found them utterly beyond their control. Kings and princes who had initially enthusiastically welcomed Templar financial services gradually began to view the Order as an insidious threat to royal sovereignty and national independence. By the early 14th century, the Knights Templar had, in a cruel twist of fate, become victims of their own monumental success. Their financial empire spanned across Europe and the Mediterranean. Their political influence rivaled that of kings themselves, and their military reputation remained formidable despite the devastating loss of the Holy Land. They had utterly transcended their original role as humble protectors of pilgrims to become a power unto themselves, a development that would ultimately prove fatal. The temple's treasury had swelled beyond all reasonable expectation, transforming a small band of devoted warrior monks into an international organization of unprecedented wealth and pervasive influence. But in medieval Europe, power that could not be controlled was, by its very nature, power that actively invited destruction. And the very financial innovations that had made the Templars so indispensable would soon render them intolerable to those who desperately sought absolute dominion over Christian Europe. As the 13th century drew to its close, the vast streams of silver and gold flowing through Templar counting houses would soon be ominously overshadowed by the dark, malevolent schemes of those who coveted their immense wealth and deeply feared their unwavering independence. The temple that had been meticulously built on profound spiritual foundations would face its greatest, most existential test, not on the hallowed battlefields where they had earned such enduring glory, but within the silent, calculating counting houses where they had accumulated a power that their enemies could no longer afford to ignore or tolerate. The dark before dawn. The fall. In the chilling pre-dawn darkness of Friday, October 13, 1307, across the entire Kingdom of France, royal agents moved with silent, predetermined purpose towards their assigned destinations. In their hands, sealed letters bore the unequivocal commands of Philip IV, the Iron King, whose unyielding will had meticulously forged France into the most powerful monarchy in Europe. By the time the sun ascended, the most dramatic and utterly ruthless blow ever struck against a religious order would be irrevocably complete, thus commencing a tragic chapter that would utterly destroy the Knights Templar and cast an enduring, dark shadow across the medieval world. The profound roots of this catastrophe stretched back for years, growing from an intricate web of insatiable political ambition, desperate financial need, and the perilous intersection of burgeoning temporal power with waning spiritual authority. Philip IV of France, tall, strikingly handsome, and utterly merciless in his relentless pursuit of royal supremacy, had dedicated his entire reign to systematically dismantling any force that dared to challenge the absolute sovereignty he claimed as his divine right. The Templars represented everything Philip both despised and profoundly feared about the old medieval order. They answered directly to the Pope rather than to him. They commanded an immense wealth that fiercely rivaled his own royal treasury. They maintained formidable armed forces that moved with unfettered freedom across his borders. Most glaringly of all, they held substantial mortgages on royal lands and periodically reminded the king of his significant debts to their order. For a monarch determined to establish the principle that within France the king was, in essence, an emperor, the Templars' independent status was utterly intolerable. The relationship between the French crown and the order had steadily deteriorated throughout Philip's reign. What had once been a mutually beneficial partnership had soured into an atmosphere of deep suspicion and bitter resentment. The Templars' own arrogance, for they had indeed grown proud in their immense power and wealth, combined with Philip's almost paranoid desire for absolute control, created an explosively volatile situation that needed only a single spark to ignite it into an inferno. That fateful spark arrived with the Order's profound vulnerability following the devastating loss of the Holy Land, with Acre fallen and the Crusader states irrevocably destroyed. The Templars' original, stated mission appeared glaringly obsolete. Their growing number of enemies could now convincingly argue that these warrior monks had outlived their primary purpose, that their immense wealth and privileged status were no longer justified by any tangible service to Christendom. Plans for new crusades remained largely theoretical, and public enthusiasm for expensive Eastern adventures had waned considerably. Philip's insidious campaign against the Templars commenced with subtle, yet highly effective propaganda designed to systematically undermine their reputation and meticulously prepare public opinion for more drastic, decisive action. Rumors, carefully crafted and disseminated, circulated throughout France, darkly hinting that the order harbored sinister secrets, that their initiation ceremonies involved blasphemous practices, and that their vast wealth had fundamentally corrupted their once sacred spiritual mission. Former members, who had been expelled from the order for various infractions, were actively encouraged to come forward with lurid, often fabricated, tales of heresy and perverse practices. The accusations that would eventually be leveled against the Templars formed a disturbing catalogue of medieval fears and fantastical imaginings. These included the denial of Christ, ritualistic spitting on the cross, obscene ceremonies, the worship of a demonic idol named Baphomet, and widespread homosexual practices among the brothers. These charges were meticulously crafted to shock medieval sensibilities to their core, while simultaneously remaining sufficiently vague to be exceedingly difficult to disprove. They masterfully combined religious horror with pervasive sexual anxiety in ways precisely calculated to generate maximum public revulsion. Beneath these theological accusations lay more immediate, intensely practical concerns. Philip desperately needed money, vast, unimaginable amounts of it, to fund his incessant wars, his sprawling administration, and his grand, ambitious architectural projects. The royal treasury was chronically depleted, while the Templars' wealth seemed utterly inexhaustible. If the order could be utterly destroyed and its immense assets seized, Philip's pressing financial problems would, in one swift stroke, be completely solved. The trumped-up charges of heresy conveniently provided the perfect legal mechanism for accomplishing this seizure, while maintaining a facade of defending the sacred faith. The king's principal instrument in this nefarious campaign was Guillaume de Narrated, his chancellor and arguably one of the most ruthless and cunning political operators of the entire medieval period. Narrated had already demonstrated his chilling willingness to employ any means necessary in service of royal power when he orchestrated the humiliating public downfall of Pope Boniface VIII at Anagni, effectively crushing papal pretensions to supremacy over secular monarchs. The total destruction of the Templars would be his crowning masterpiece. Preparations for this audacious strike were conducted with painstaking, meticulous secrecy. Royal agents stationed throughout France received sealed instructions that were strictly forbidden from being opened until October 12. Comprehensive lists were compiled of every Templar property to be seized, every knight to be arrested, and every scrap of evidence to be collected. The sheer scale of the operation demanded unparalleled coordination across the entire kingdom, involving hundreds of loyal officials and thousands of soldiers. Yet, astonishingly, no warning of the impending action reached the Templars themselves. Jacques de Molay, the venerable last Grand Master of the Order, was in France during these crucial months, actively negotiating with the Pope about ambitious plans for a new crusade, seemingly entirely unaware of the perilous danger gathering ominously around him. The 70-year-old veteran of numerous Eastern campaigns had dedicated his entire life to serving the order, and appeared genuinely shocked when accusations of heresy began to surface. His responses to the grave charges were defensive but tragically unfocused, sorely lacking the political sophistication necessary to effectively counter Philip's meticulously orchestrated campaign. Pope Clement V found himself ensnared between his theoretical spiritual authority over the Templars and the very real, practical power of the French king, who, crucially, controlled the territories where the papal court resided. Clement, a weak and indecisive man who owed his election partly to Philip's considerable influence, proved utterly incapable of providing the strong, decisive leadership that might have salvaged the order. His half-hearted attempts at compromise satisfied no one, and ultimately only served to empower Philip's more brutal and decisive actions. When dawn broke on October 13, 1307, the blow fell with stunning swiftness and an almost terrifying completeness. Across the entirety of France, royal agents simultaneously appeared at every Templar commandery, castle, and urban house, bearing royal warrants for the immediate arrest of all members of the order. The Templars, caught entirely off guard, offered no significant resistance. They were taken into custody, their property summarily sealed, their immense treasure confiscated, and their members marched away to imprisonment and brutal interrogation. The psychological impact of this perfectly coordinated assault was enormous. The Templars, who had previously seemed so powerful, so incredibly wealthy, so utterly secure in their papal protection, were revealed to be as vulnerable as any other group when royal power was exercised with sufficient determination and meticulous planning. The widespread arrest sent shock waves throughout Europe, unequivocally demonstrating that no organization, however prestigious or well-connected, was truly safe from the wrath of a determined monarch. The interrogations that followed were conducted with medieval thoroughness and extreme brutality. Torture was systematically applied to extract confessions from the imprisoned Templars, with techniques ranging from the excruciating foot roasting to the infamous strappado, suspending victims by their arms twisted agonizingly behind their backs. Under such unbearable pressure, many Templars confessed to at least some of the damning charges leveled against them, thereby providing Philip with the manufactured evidence he desperately needed to justify his outrageous actions. Yet the confessions extracted under torture were contradictory and, to many contemporary observers, highly unconvincing. Some Templars confessed to spitting on the cross during their initiation, while others vehemently denied it completely. Stories about the mysterious idol Baphomet varied wildly in their details. Many of the accused later retracted their confessions when they appeared before papal commissioners, tearfully claiming they had lied only to escape further, unimaginable torture. The trials that commenced in 1308 evolved into a complex legal and political battle, fiercely fought simultaneously in royal courts, papal tribunals, and the court of volatile public opinion. Philip's agents tirelessly worked to present overwhelming evidence of Templar guilt, while the order's few, and increasingly cautious, defenders attempted to demonstrate the fabricated nature of the charges. The protracted legal proceedings dragged on for years, further complicated by intricate jurisdictional disputes and the profound reluctance of authorities outside France to blindly accept Philip's self-serving version of events. Other European monarchs observed the French assault on the Templars with decidedly mixed feelings. Some, like Edward II of England, were initially reluctant to move against an order that had served their kingdoms faithfully and without question. Others, however, saw a golden opportunity to seize vast Templar wealth for their own pressing purposes. Gradually, however, the relentless pressure of papal commands and pervasive French diplomatic influence compelled most rulers to arrest their own Templars and initiate similar proceedings. The order's once great international structure, which had been its formidable strength, now tragically became its fatal weakness. With the Grand Master and most senior leaders imprisoned in France, effective coordination of any meaningful resistance became utterly impossible. Individual commanderies and national branches of the order were left to fend for themselves, often facing hostile authorities with no central guidance or crucial support. As the trials painstakingly proceeded, the fate of individual Templars varied dramatically depending on their location and the temperament of their judges. In France, where Philip's influence was strongest and most ruthless, many knights were tragically burned at the stake as relapsed heretics, when they bravely retracted confessions made under unspeakable torture. In other countries, Templars were often permitted to join other religious orders or return to secular life after formal penance. The most tragic figure in this unfolding drama was Jacques de Molay himself. The elderly Grand Master endured years of grueling imprisonment and relentless interrogation, initially confessing under torture, but later courageously recanting and fiercely defending the order's absolute innocence. His final, defiant act came on March 18, 1314, when he was brought before Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris to receive his grim sentence. Expected to meekly confirm his confession and accept perpetual imprisonment, de Molay instead unequivocally proclaimed the order's innocence and his own unwavering willingness to die for the truth. Philip's response was swift, immediate, and utterly merciless. That very evening, de Molay and Geoffrey de Charny, preceptor of Normandy, were burned alive on a small island in the Seine. Their agonizing deaths witnessed by vast crowds that included many who had once honored them as heroes of Christendom. Legend would later claim that de Molay, as the searing flames rose around him, called down divine judgment upon his tormentors, a chilling curse that seemed to find fulfillment when both Philip IV and Pope Clement V died within months of the Grand Master's execution. The formal dissolution of the order came with Pope Clement V's bull, Vox in Excelso, on March 22, 1312, issued at the Council of Vienne. The bull abolished the Templars not because they had been definitively proven guilty of heresy, but because their reputation had been so irrevocably damaged that they could no longer effectively fulfill their sacred mission. It was a legal fiction, satisfying no one truly, but providing a face-saving formula for ending an intractable and politically charged situation. The distribution of Templar assets proved as contentious and convoluted as their initial seizure had been. The papal bull ad providem theoretically transferred most Templar property to the Hospitallers, but in practice, much of the order's immense wealth was retained by secular rulers who cynically claimed compensation for the fabricated costs of the trials and investigations. Philip IV, despite his pious protestations of religious motivation, conspicuously kept extensive Templar properties in France, while other monarchs followed strikingly similar policies in their own territories. The human cost of the Templars' destruction was immense, though tragically difficult to calculate with precision. Hundreds of knights perished in prison, under torture, or at the unforgiving stake. Thousands more saw their lives utterly destroyed as they were forcibly expelled from an order that had been their entire world. The broader, incalculable damage to the medieval ideal of the warrior monk was profound, as a pervasive cynicism brutally replaced the idealism that had once inspired the military orders. Yet, even in destruction, elements of the Templar legacy miraculously survived. In Portugal, King Dinis steadfastly refused to completely suppress the order, instead ingeniously transforming it into the Order of Christ, which would play a crucial, foundational role in subsequent Portuguese maritime exploration. Some Templars found refuge and protection in Scotland, where Robert the Bruce's own excommunication from the Church provided a convenient shield from direct papal authority. Others merged into secular knightly orders or continued their profound traditions in various forms that would eventually influence the development of Freemasonry and other fraternal organizations. The cataclysmic fall of the Knights Templar irrevocably marked the end of a pivotal era in medieval history. The once lofty ideal of the warrior monk fighting for spiritual rather than material goals had been irredeemably tainted by devastating accusations of corruption and rampant heresy. The international religious order, once answerable solely to papal rather than royal authority, had been proven tragically vulnerable to determined and ruthless royal action. The medieval synthesis of faith and warfare, which had seemed so natural and harmonious to earlier generations, began to fragment irrevocably as secular and religious authorities pursued increasingly divergent and often conflicting paths. As the last echoes of the scandal finally faded, as the final trials concluded and the remaining properties were distributed, Europe emerged into a stark new age where royal power had been unequivocally demonstrated to triumph over even the most prestigious religious authority. The dark before dawn had indeed passed, but the dawn that followed illuminated a shattered world where the old certainties had been utterly demolished, and new forms of power were fiercely struggling to be born. The white mantles that had once struck terror into Muslim hearts and inspired profound Christian reverence were gone forever, tragically burned with their wearers or carefully hidden away by brave survivors who dared not reveal their former, perilous allegiance. In their place remained only haunting memories, captivating legends, and the enduring, unanswered questions about what the Knights Templar had truly been, and what formidable forces had been powerful enough to destroy them so completely, and so utterly finally. Echoes of eternity. The enduring legacy. In the centuries that followed the searing flames of Paris, where Jacques de Molay bravely met his martyr's death on that cold March evening in 1314, the Knights Templar gracefully transitioned from documented history into the rich tapestry of legend, from verifiable fact into the tantalizing realm of mystery and boundless speculation. Yet, like the smoke from those final, tragic fires, their profound memory drifted ceaselessly across the ages, subtly settling into the collective consciousness of generations who would, time and again, discover in the Templars' complex story a poignant mirror reflecting their own enduring struggles between unwavering faith and unchecked power, lofty idealism and insidious corruption, selfless sacrifice and bitter betrayal. The immediate aftermath of the Order's brutal destruction starkly revealed the true, pervasive extent of their deep integration into the very fabric of European society. Templar churches, with their distinctive round naves meticulously built in imitation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, stood empty across the vast continent, bearing silent witness to a spiritual vision that had majestically transcended all national boundaries. Templar estates, numbering in the thousands, passed into new hands that often proved far less capable administrators than the methodical and highly efficient brothers who had managed them for generations. The groundbreaking financial innovations that the Templars had pioneered continued to evolve, now under different stewardship. Italian banking houses eagerly adopted and meticulously refined the credit instruments and international transfer systems that Templar treasurers had ingeniously developed. The revolutionary concept of international banking, of sprawling financial networks that fearlessly transcended conventional political boundaries, had been unequivocally proven viable by the Order's 2 centuries of remarkable success, a powerful legacy that would eventually contribute profoundly to the burgeoning commercial revolution of the later Middle Ages. In England, the iconic Temple Church in London remained a poignant and powerful reminder of the Order's former grandeur. Built in the distinctive round style and housing the effigy tombs of prominent Templars, it served as more than just a mere mausoleum for individual knights. It stood as a solemn monument to the entire, overarching ideal of the warrior monk that had once so deeply inspired medieval Christendom. Visitors would come to gaze upon these stoic stone figures, their hands reverently clasped in eternal prayer, their swords resolutely at their sides, representing a perfect synthesis of martial prowess and profound spiritual values that seemed increasingly remote from later, more pragmatic ages. Portugal provided the most strikingly successful example of Templar continuity. King Dinis's astute transformation of the Portuguese Templars into the Order of Christ not only preserved their cherished traditions, but enabled them to play crucial, foundational roles in the momentous maritime explorations that would dramatically expand European horizons across the globe. Prince Henry the Navigator, a pivotal figure in this era, was himself a proud member of the Order of Christ, and the distinctive cross that prominently marked Portuguese exploration from the African coast to the distant shores of India and Brazil was, in fact, the very same red cross that had adorned Templar mantles in the Holy Land. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, meticulously built by the Sinclair family in the 15th century, became another captivating focal point for Templar legends. Its elaborately intricate stone carvings, seamlessly combining Christian symbolism with mysterious botanical motifs and complex geometric patterns, were interpreted by later generations as subtly encoding secret Templar knowledge. While scholarly consensus generally suggests no direct Templar involvement in the chapel's actual construction, the enduring legends surrounding it powerfully demonstrate the lasting appeal of the notion that the Order's profound wisdom had miraculously survived its political destruction. The Renaissance period brought a renewed and fervent interest in the Templars as humanist scholars diligently rediscovered medieval texts and began to study the Order's history with greater critical attention and intellectual rigor. The burgeoning printing press made previously rare documents more widely accessible, enabling a broader and more informed examination of the damning charges leveled against the Templars and the precise circumstances of their controversial trials. Many discerning Renaissance intellectuals ultimately concluded that the Order had been the unfortunate victim of ruthless political persecution rather than genuinely guilty of any true heresy. During the tumultuous Reformation, Protestant writers found in the Templars' story a remarkably useful precedent for their own bitter conflicts with pervasive papal authority. The Order's destruction could be conveniently presented as compelling evidence of Catholic corruption and the inherent dangers of unchecked ecclesiastical power. Conversely, Catholic Counter-Reformation writers tended to emphasize the Templars' perceived moral failings as a convenient justification for their suppression, seeing in their tragic fate a stern warning about the spiritual perils of excessive wealth and undue worldly involvement. The Enlightenment ushered in a distinctly different perspective on Templar studies. As rationalist thinkers scrutinized the Order's remarkable financial innovations and vast international organization with profound admiration rather than ingrained suspicion, Voltaire and other prominent philosophes perceived in the Templars an illuminating example of the kind of rational, highly efficient organization that possessed the inherent capacity to transcend the petty nationalisms and deeply ingrained religious prejudices that so plagued 18th century Europe. Their destruction was thus widely viewed as a lamentable triumph of rampant superstition and ruthless royal tyranny over the forces of progress and enlightened reason. It was during this intellectually vibrant period that the Templars began their most surprising and enduring afterlife. As a powerful inspiration for Freemasonry and other enigmatic secret societies that audaciously claimed direct descent from the medieval order, the Masonic Knights Templar degree, meticulously developed in the 18th century, presented its initiates as direct inheritors of Templar traditions and profound wisdom. While meticulous historians have unearthed no credible evidence of any direct, unbroken continuity between the medieval order and modern Freemasonry, the symbolic connection proved enormously powerful, captivating, and persistently enduring. The Romantic movement of the early 19th century discovered in the Templars perfect subjects for its profound fascination with medieval chivalry, arcane secret knowledge, and tragic heroism. Sir Walter Scott's immensely popular novel, Ivanhoe, helped to widely popularize a romanticized image of the Templars that skillfully combined their historical military prowess with fictional elements of tantalizing mystery and complex moral ambiguity. The archetypal figure of the Templar knight, proud, mysterious, and potentially dangerous, became a recurring stock character in Romantic literature. Archaeological discoveries of the 19th and 20th centuries added vital new dimensions to Templar studies. Excavations at Templar sites dramatically revealed the astonishing sophistication of their architectural and engineering achievements. Concurrently, extensive documentary research in European archives uncovered thousands of previously unknown Templar records, allowing for a more accurate and nuanced assessment of the Order's actual practices and deeply held beliefs, generally supporting the compelling conclusion that the charges of heresy had been maliciously fabricated for cynical political purposes. The 20th century witnessed an explosive surge of popular interest in Templar mysteries, vigorously fueled by best-selling novels, captivating documentary films, and passionate amateur historians who proposed increasingly elaborate and often wild theories about the Order's alleged secret knowledge and hidden treasures. Books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and Dan Brown's ubiquitous The Da Vinci Code introduced millions of readers to highly speculative theories about Templar involvement in preserving dangerous religious secrets, or discovering mystical knowledge during their presence in the Holy Land, while academic historians largely remain skeptical of such sensational theories. The pervasive popular fascination they generated reflected an enduring human attraction to the compelling idea that history's official narratives might subtly conceal deeper, more profound truths. The Templars' documented secrecy surrounding their initiation ceremonies, combined with their sudden and violent destruction, created a tantalizing void that fervent speculation and vivid imagination eagerly filled. Modern archaeological work at Templar sites has unequivocally revealed the Order's genuine achievements and profound innovations. Excavations at Atlit Castle in Israel have unearthed compelling evidence of the sophistication of Templar military engineering, while meticulous studies of their European commanderies have demonstrated their significant contributions to both agricultural and commercial development. The reality of Templar accomplishments, while perhaps less exotic than popular theories suggest, remains undeniably impressive and profoundly historically significant. Contemporary scholarship has also provided a much clearer and more nuanced understanding of the intricate political and economic factors that ultimately led to the Order's tragic destruction. Philip IV's relentless campaign against the Templars is now widely recognized as an integral part of a broader, more assertive declaration of royal sovereignty against the long-established international religious authority, a significant trend that would culminate in the eventual establishment of national church. Yes, and the marked decline of papal temporal power across Europe. The Templar legacy in the realms of international law and finance continues to attract significant scholarly attention. Their pioneering development of letters of credit, standardized accounting procedures, and vast international financial networks established crucial precedents that profoundly influenced subsequent commercial law and modern banking practices. Their enduring impact on the development of international organizations, entities that seamlessly operate across national boundaries while meticulously maintaining unified governance, remains highly relevant to modern studies of globalization and international cooperation. Religious communities have also found continuous inspiration in the Templar ideal of brilliantly combining active service with contemplative devotion. Modern military chaplaincies, various religious orders dedicated to social service, and numerous faith-based humanitarian organizations frequently trace their spiritual lineage directly to the medieval military orders, seeing in the Templars' profound example a compelling model for bravely engaging with worldly challenges while steadfastly maintaining spiritual commitment. The Templars' impressive architectural legacy endures in the numerous churches, formidable castles, and countless other buildings they meticulously constructed across Europe and the Holy Land. Many of these magnificent structures remain in use centuries after their builders' tragic destruction, serving as powerful testaments to the unparalleled quality of Templar craftsmanship and engineering prowess. The distinctive round churches, built in pious imitation of the Holy Sepulchre, continue to serve vibrant Christian communities, their very architectural form preserving the living memory of the Order's originating and sacred mission. Educational institutions throughout Europe and the Americas proudly bear Templar names or claim profound inspiration from the Order's unwavering commitment to learning and the vital preservation of knowledge. Universities, libraries, and advanced research institutions frequently invoke the Templars' example as vigilant guardians of wisdom and staunch defenders of intellectual freedom against the insidious forces of political opposition and religious fanaticism. The complex moral questions inherently raised by the Templars' story remain acutely relevant to contemporary discussions about the intricate relationship between religious faith and political power. The immense responsibilities that accompany wealth and privilege, and the inherent dangers of unchecked authority. Their dramatic rise and equally dramatic fall provide invaluable case studies for ethicists, political scientists, and historians meticulously examining how noble ideals can be subtly corrupted by success, and how powerful institutions can be brutally destroyed by determined and ruthless enemies. As the 21st century steadily progresses, new technologies enable fresh and innovative approaches to Templar studies. Digital archives render previously inaccessible documents readily available to eager researchers worldwide, while advanced archaeological techniques continue to reveal fascinating new details about Templar sites and artifacts. Sophisticated computer modeling now allows historians to reconstruct complex Templar financial networks and meticulously analyze their profound economic impact with unprecedented precision and clarity. Popular culture continues to find boundless inspiration in Templar themes, with video games, captivating television series, and feature films regularly depicting the Order as a mysterious, shadowy force operating behind significant historical events. These contemporary interpretations, while often historically inaccurate, powerfully demonstrate the enduring and captivating power of the Templar story to capture the human imagination and provoke endless speculation about the hidden forces subtly shaping human events. The profound questions that the Templar story raises about the proper relationship between spiritual and temporal authority, about the corrupting effects of unchecked power and immense wealth, and about the ultimate fate of idealistic movements in a pragmatic world, remain as acutely relevant today as they were 7 centuries ago. In their meteoric rise from humble origins to vast international power, and in their sudden, tragic fall from grace to utter destruction, the Knights Templar embodied both the highest aspirations and the inherent tragic limitations of medieval Christendom. As evening light gently fades over the haunting ruins of Templar castles in the Holy Land, as modern pilgrims reverently visit the churches the Order so meticulously built across Europe, and as diligent scholars continue to unearth new documents and artifacts that brilliantly illuminate their complex history, the Knights Templar remain far more than mere historical curiosities. They serve as profound mirrors, reflecting eternal human struggles between idealism and pervasive corruption, between selfless service and self-serving interest, between the ephemeral kingdom of God and the often brutal kingdoms of this world. Their white mantles may have tragically burned with their bodies on that fateful March evening in Paris, but the profound questions they raised and the enduring ideals they passionately represented continue to echo powerfully through the centuries, constant reminders that even the most powerful instituti ons are inherently fragile, that even the noblest purposes can be tragically corrupted, and that the tireless search for truth about human nature and divine purpose perseveres across generations, finding fresh expression in each new age, while remaining fundamentally unchanged in its essential, timeless concerns. The echoes of eternity that resonate so deeply in the Templar's story are, in essence, the echoes of all human striving. The innate desire to serve something far greater than oneself, the constant struggle to maintain purity in a world often tainted by corruption, and the ultimate, inescapable confrontation with mortality that patiently awaits every individual and every institution. In their 2-century journey from sacred fire to desolate ashes, the Knights Templar became eternal, enduring symbols of these universal human experiences, thereby ensuring that their profound memory would persist long after their physical presence had completely vanished from the face of the earth. The eternal vigil, a timeless presence, in the profound silence of ancient stone chambers where Templar prayers once reverently echoed, in the haunting shadows of ruined castles that stoically overlook forgotten battlefields, and in the hidden corners of modern cities where their distinctive round churches still offer solace and shelter to the faithful. Something of the Knights Templar endures. Not the men themselves, for they lie long buried beneath centuries of accumulated dust and captivating legend, but the enduring spirit that animated them, the potent ideal that so profoundly inspired them, and the eternal questions their very existence posed about faith, power, and the human capacity for both unparalleled greatness and profound tragedy. The Templar legacy continues to live on in ways both strikingly visible and subtly hidden, profoundly practical and deeply mystical, rigorously scholarly and widely popular. It can be discerned in the foundational legal principles that govern modern international banking, in the distinctive architectural forms that subtly echo their unique building style, and in the complex moral codes that strive to delicately balance spiritual commitment with necessary worldly responsibility. Most profoundly, it persistently survives in the continuing human struggle to reconcile the often conflicting demands of the sacred with the undeniable necessities of the secular, a profound struggle that gave birth to the order and ultimately consumed it. Standing today in the hallowed Temple Church in London, where medieval knights lie solemnly carved in stone with their hands folded in eternal prayer, visitors can instinctively sense something of what moved those long-dead warriors to willingly abandon comfort and personal safety for the harsh, unyielding demands of crusading warfare. The very air within seems thick with memory, heavy with the immense weight of solemn vows taken and lives bravely given for purposes that utterly transcended personal gain or fleeting glory. Here, the Templar ideal achieves its most perfect and pure expression, not in the convoluted legends and tantalizing mysteries that often surround the order, but in the simple, profound fact of unwavering dedication itself. The modern world, for all its dazzling technological sophistication and profound philosophical complexity, still grapples intensely with the fundamental tensions that so profoundly shape Templar history. How does one truly serve God in a world that often appears indifferent to divine purposes? How does one meticulously maintain spiritual purity while bravely engaging with the inherent compromises and pervasive corruptions deeply embedded in worldly power? How does one strive to build lasting institutions that serve eternal purposes while operating inevitably within temporal limitations? These very questions, which so powerfully compelled young noblemen to embrace Templar vows in the 12th century, remain as challenging and pertinent today as they were 800 years ago. In bustling hospitals where dedicated medical missionaries courageously combine healing with fervent evangelism. In schools where compassionate religious communities provide education without regard to students' ability to pay. And in courageous relief organizations that tirelessly bring aid to disaster victims regardless of their faith or nationality, the Templar synthesis of profound spiritual commitment and vital practica. L's service finds powerful contemporary expression. These modern inheritors of the timeless warrior-monk ideal may not wear distinctive white mantles or wield formidable swords, but they embody the same fundamental and unwavering conviction that animated the original Templars, that true faith unequivocally demands resolute action, that a spiritual calling necessitates worldly engagement, and that dedicated service to God must manifest itself tangibly in compassionate service to humanity. The financial innovations so brilliantly pioneered by the Templars continue to evolve in forms they could never possibly have imagined. Electronic transfers, intricate international credit systems, vast global investment networks, all trace their fundamental conceptual ancestry directly to the visionary Templar treasurers who first astutely recognized that money could traverse vast distances far more safely and efficiently than physical goods. The complex and often controversial modern global economy rests firmly on foundations that medieval monks meticulously laid when they developed the world's very first international banking system. The Templars' tragic and sudden end serves as a perpetual, stark warning about the insidious corrupting effects of unchecked power and the inherent vulnerability of even the most outwardly successful institutions. Their brutal destruction by Philip IV powerfully demonstrated how swiftly political circumstances could shift, how ruthlessly temporal authority could move against profound spiritual claims, and how easily public opinion could be skillfully manipulated by determined propaganda campaigns. These crucial lessons remain acutely relevant in any age when powerful institutions boldly claim special authority or demand exemption from normal, essential accountability. Educational institutions worldwide proudly invoke the Templar example in their mission statements and foundational documents, seeing in the Order's unwavering commitment to preserving and transmitting knowledge a compelling model for their own vital work. Universities, venerable libraries, and advanced research centers that claim Templar inspiration wisely recognize that the tireless pursuit of truth demands the same potent combination of disciplined dedication and robust institutional protection that so powerfully characterized the medieval order at its absolute zenith. The distinctive art and compelling architecture meticulously associated with the Templars continue to inspire contemporary creators who discover in their profound aesthetic principles rich resources for modern expression. The mathematical precision of their intricate geometric designs, the profound symbolic richness of their iconographic programs, and the seamless integration of spiritual purpose with essential functional necessity, all provide compelling models for discerning artists, visionary architects, and innovative designers seeking to create work that simultaneously serves both practical and transcendent purposes. Archaeological work at former Templar sites continues to yield fascinating new insights into their daily lives, their remarkable technological innovations, and their lasting cultural impact. Excavations consistently reveal not legendary treasures or mystical artifacts, but compelling evidence of remarkable organizational efficiency, advanced technological sophistication, and impressive cultural adaptation. The tangible reality of Templar achievement, meticulously documented through careful scientific investigation, consistently proves more genuinely impressive than the often wild fantasies that so frequently surround their enduring memory. International law and diplomatic practice carefully preserve elements of the Templar legacy in fundamental concepts such as extraterritoriality, diplomatic immunity, and the very notion of transnational organization. The modern understanding that certain institutions can seamlessly operate across national boundaries while meticulously maintaining their own internal governance owes a substantial debt to medieval precedents boldly established by the military orders. International organizations like the United Nations, the Red Cross, and various charitable foundations operate on fundamental principles that would have been remarkably familiar to astute Templar administrators centuries ago. Religious communities continue to find profound inspiration in the Templar example of brilliantly combining contemplative spirituality with active, worldly service. Modern military chaplains, dedicated missionary organizations, and faith-based relief agencies draw deeply on the venerable tradition of warrior monks who diligently sought to serve God through courageous engagement with worldly challenges rather than complete withdrawal from them. The inherent tension between profound spiritual commitment and pressing practical necessity that so fundamentally defined Templar existence remains central to contemporary religious life. The lingering mystery surrounding the Templars' initiation ceremonies and enigmatic internal practices continues to captivate scholars and popular writers alike. While no credible evidence definitively supports the more exotic theories about their purported secret knowledge or hidden treasures, the well-documented fact that they meticulously maintained private rituals and strictly restricted information clearly demonstrates their astute understanding that some profound truths cannot be casually shared or easily comprehended. This crucial recognition of the sacred nature of certain knowledge powerfully resonates with modern scientific and spiritual communities that diligently guard their own specialized insights. The Templars' inherently international character provides a compelling precedent for contemporary discussions about globalization, cross-cultural exchange, and the evolving concept of transnational identity. Their remarkable ability to maintain a unified purpose while flexibly adapting to diverse local conditions offers invaluable models for modern organizations striving to balance global coherence with the essential regional responsiveness. Their profound success in forging a deep-seated loyalty that powerfully transcended national boundaries suggests exciting possibilities for human cooperation that remain acutely relevant in our singly interconnected world. The very technology that enabled the Templars' sophisticated communication networks, their swift couriers, their intricate coded messages, their standardized procedures, has dramatically evolved into the complex digital systems that seamlessly connect the modern world. Yet, the fundamental challenges they courageously faced in maintaining organizational coherence across vast distances while meticulously preserving security and diligently ensuring accuracy remain essentially unchanged. Modern cybersecurity experts and vast international corporations grapple with the same basic problems that confronted diligent Templar administrators 7 centuries ago. The Templars' significant agricultural and industrial innovations profoundly contributed to medieval technological development in ways that enduringly influenced subsequent economic growth. Their mills, foundries, and workshops served as vital laboratories for practical experimentation and the crucial transfer of technological knowledge. Their systematic and efficient approach to land management and meticulous resource utilization provided exemplary models for sustainable development that remain highly relevant to contemporary environmental challenges. The liturgical traditions thoughtfully associated with the Templars continue to influence Christian worship, particularly within communities that fervently emphasize the profound relationship between spiritual devotion and practical, active service. Their remarkable integration of military and monastic elements in daily prayer, their strong emphasis on rigorous discipline and unwavering regularity in religious observance, and their deep understanding of work itself as a form of worship, all provide invaluable resources for contemporary Christian communities earnestly seeking to gracefully balance contemplation with decisive action. The Templars' profound martyrdom, both on the unforgiving battlefields of the Holy Land and amidst the searing fires of Philip IV's ruthless persecution, established crucial precedents for understanding how faithful people bravely respond to intense persecution and the ultimate reality of death. Their compelling example of steadfastly maintaining commitment to principle even under extreme and unbearable pressure provides enduring inspiration for subsequent generations facing similar daunting challenges. The unwavering courage of Jacques de Molay and his devoted brothers in their final, agonizing moments continues to powerfully inspire those who find themselves called to bear courageous witness for truth against overwhelming opposition. As the modern world earnestly struggles with complex questions about the proper, delicate relationship between religious faith and political power, between the sanctity of individual conscience and the authority of powerful institutions, between cherished local tradition and irresistible global integration, the Templar example offers both profound inspiration and a stern, cautionary warning. Their remarkable, transformative achievements powerfully demonstrate what truly can be accomplished when spiritual purpose seamlessly combines with practical skill and rigorous institutional discipline. Their tragic, sudden destruction starkly reveals how quickly success can breed bitter enemies and how incredibly vulnerable even the most outwardly powerful organizations remain to determined, relentless opposition. In quiet chapels where their graceful round arches lovingly frame modern prayers, in vast university libraries where their meticulously kept financial records continue to inform contemporary economic theory, in compassionate hospitals where their model of selfless service continues to inspire vital healing work, and in the ongoing, universal human struggle to create enduring institutions that serve eternal purposes while bravely engaging with temporal challenges, the Knights Templar maintain their eternal vigil. They stand guard not over transient physical treasures or contested geographic territories, but over the enduring human conviction that life can possess profound meaning far beyond mere material success. That immense power can, and should, serve purposes infinitely greater than narrow self-interest, and that even in the darkest, most despairing hours before the dawn, glimpses of ultimate redemption remain miraculously possible for those with the courage and perseverance to earnestly seek them. The distinctive white mantles have long since dissolved into dust. The bold red crosses have faded from their worn fabric. The formidable swords have rusted silently in forgotten graves. But the indomitable spirit that so nobly clothed itself in those mantles, that blazed forth so brightly in those crosses, that so fiercely wielded those swords in devoted service of divine purpose, continues its tireless watch across the centuries. In every generation that earnestly seeks to balance profound faith with rational reason, selfless service with essential survival, and lofty idealism with pragmatic realism, the Templars' vigil continues, their profound example bearing powerful witness to both the inspiring possibility of transcendence and the persistent, undeniable reality of human failure. The majestic temple they so painstakingly built was not ultimately made of cold stone, but of countless human lives passionately dedicated to purposes far greater than themselves. Though the original builders are long gone, though the external forms have transformed far beyond recognition, though the very name of their order has now become more captivating legend than verifiable history, the temple itself endures. It endures not in any specific physical location, but in the continuing, universal human quest for profound meaning, dedicated service, and an enduring connection with the divine force that so majestically moves the sun and the other stars. In this eternal seeking, the Knights Templar have achieved the only true immortality that truly matters. They live on vibrantly in the highest aspirations of all who seek to serve something far greater than themselves, who strive to build something infinitely more lasting than their own brief, fleeting lives, and who bravely maintain hope that even in the deepest, most profound darkness before dawn, the light will most assuredly come again.